I have here a selection of the Caran Neocolor II Aquarelli, which are water-soluble wax pastels. Essentially, they're just like crayons that you can use them either dry or as watercolour, but just by wetting them. And I thought it would be fun to get them out today and see what you can do with them, because there are lots of different ways that they can be used, and they're really quite fun. They're quite portable, they are quite small sticks. They do snap quite easily, as this one here and this one here will show you. So be careful when you're using them. It's not because they're highly breakable, but it's just because they are, I think they're quite long, and if you put a bit of pressure on them, they can easily give way. They do sell them in sets, and they come in different sizes. I believe the biggest set is of 84 crayons, but they also come singly, and I've just bought them as individuals and picked out the colours that I wanted. So let's get swatching. I'll just quickly go through the dry colours first, putting those down, and then we can look at them in more detail when I put the water on. The paper that I'm using is Fabriano mixed media paper. It's 250 gram, and it's got a slight texture on it, so you can really see that as I put the dry colours down. It's not filling in all of the tooth by any means, so that will be a nice advantage for us when we come to putting on the water, because it will fill in the tooth, and then we'll have the opportunity to put other colours on top, so that's going to be quite good. And it also, just the way it is now, it really gives you that typical crayon colour, so if you like that, that's something that you could take advantage of, or if you don't like it so much, you could colour it up. It wouldn't be quite so pronounced if you used a smoother paper, but this one here, I mean, the tooth isn't massive, but it's definitely showing through. The pencils, I keep calling them pencils. The crayons or wax pastels, as I put them down, they feel really pleasant to use. They feel very dry, so not at all like a soft oil pastel might feel. But at the same time, they have a lot of give. They move very smoothly over the paper, and yeah, you have a lot of control with them. So I like that too. They don't feel squidgy. You can obviously press harder and get a thicker line, or you can use them more finely, but they definitely feel controllable, I guess. I haven't had that feeling with some of the oil pastels that I used. It felt like a big squidge, which is nice in a different way, but yeah, it's just a different feel. So these feel much more like a pencil. In fact, they don't feel like a pencil at all. I'm just trying to think of another word to avoid saying control again. Anyway, they feel nice. So okay, so that's all the colours. So now let's head in with some water. I'm going to try not to put too much water on my brush, because I don't want to drown them, but I just really want to release the pigment. Maybe I'll do more of a close-up. I have to remember when I go off screen. Okay, turquoise blue. So you can see as I put the water down that crayon texture is left behind on the paper. I always think that's a really nice thing about both colour pencils and these, because you can really use it to your advantage. If that was something that you didn't want, then these probably wouldn't be the right thing to use, and you would maybe pick more of a watercolour or a gouache or something where you're not going to get that issue. But I think it's really beautiful, and you can totally use it to your advantage, and that's kind of one of the reasons for picking these, I think. So the colour releases very easily and quickly when I put the water on. I've done exactly what I tried not to do. I have gone off. Okay, so I just did the dark green and the Chinese green. So let's see, I can fit 4 on there. All right, I'm going to put my finger there so I don't forget next time. Okay, light olive. This one's green ochre. This is such a useful colour, but I really struggle with it. There's a part of me that just doesn't like it at all. And it changes quite a lot when it's dry and when it's wet. So maybe I'll like it more when it's wet. But yeah, sometimes I see other people using it and I think, oh yeah, that's a great colour. But then sometimes when I use it, I'm like, ugh. Maybe I'm just using it for the wrong things or in the wrong combination. This is raw umber. So these crayons do have a light fast rating, but as far as I can tell, it's not written on the crayon itself. And I think you have to go either to the website or to the packaging. Maybe if you bought them in a set, there would be some packaging in there that would tell you the light fast rating of each crayon. So I don't have that available to me right now. But if you are interested in these, and if you were going to do some work that would be sold to a client or a customer, then you might want to look into the light fast ratings. If it's just for your sketchbook or something that's going to be scanned, it's not such a big deal. This is sky blue. This is mauve. Aubergine. Indigo blue. This one calls itself purple, although to me it's like a hot pink. Ruby red. Raspberry red. Pink. Salmon pink. Vermilion. Golden yellow. And last but not least, English red. So that's all the colours swatched out, all the colours that I have. As I said earlier, I bought these individually, so you can do that and you can make your own selection of the exact colours that you want, which is something I really enjoy. It's also really fun to have a nice full set as well, but if you're not sure that you are necessarily going to want the whole set or use the whole set that much, then sometimes it's nicer to just buy them singly. Okay, so I'm going to try these out and do a drawing at the same time. So I'm not sure exactly what the outcome is going to be, but we'll just figure it out as we go along and try some of the techniques. The first thing that you can do with these is draw with them. I'm going to grab this green and draw a tree. So you can just use them exactly as you would any other drawing tool. They give you that really lovely crayon mark, which is so enjoyable. And you can use them so that you get fine lines, or you can get really thick lines just by pressing, or darker lines by pressing harder. When the pencils are new, I think I had one, or this one here, it's got a fine tip right on the top, so you can use that and just get a really fine line. They are quite soft, so the tip disappears quite quickly, I have to say, but you can create one if you want. And also if they get really blunt, like I've got a blue one here which is really blunt, you can just shave away bits and then get yourself back that sharper point. You can also put them in a pencil sharpener, but I prefer to use a craft knife to do that, because then I can get exactly the point that I want. So let me just show you that right now. This one is quite new, so it's quite pointy anyway, but I can just really go into that tip and just get a nice sharp point without losing too much of the crayon. And then if you didn't want to just throw away the sharpenings, you can keep them and then wet them later. So I'll put those to one side for now, and we can use those when we get onto the wet section. For now, we'll continue with the dry. So yeah, you can just use these to draw. You can also use them to colour in areas. So again, all of the tooth of the paper is showing through here, which I may or may not want. If I don't want it, I can just go over it harder with my dry crayon and try and fill that in, going over it in different directions to try and get rid of that tooth. Not being entirely successful. If you really wanted to use it dry and get rid of all the tooth, again, I would suggest a smoother paper, but that can also be quite nice because I can then put a different color on top. I'm going to put this blue on top, and that will help to blend it and fill in more of that tooth, and it will also help to change the color a little bit, so you can really play around with them and get some nice variations. I'm going to come in with a lighter color, so I'm going to put this lighter blue on top. So that's really, by blending two colors, I get a whole third new color. If I were to do the green just by itself and the blue just by itself, that's what they would be like. But then if I blend them together like I have on this leaf, I get this third color. And then you can go back with the green and then just go over it. So you can get a light on dark effect, which is really great. So I'm just going to fill in these leaves. So you can get lots of different color variations, even if you've only got a few different colors. Just by using them together and blending one over the next, you can get a variety of different colors. Or I could make them just some vein leaves, vein marks on this leaf. It really has got, though, that white tooth coming through, and I am not particularly wanting that. So what I'm going to do here is just rub some of this, this is the light olive, down. With a light pressure. And then I'm going to grab a brush and just go over that, just so we can get a bit of a background colour. It's leaving those marks, the crayon lines, not entirely, some of them disappear, but some of them are left, and that gives it a lovely texture. Got to avoid going around the leaf. Avoid touching the leaf, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that to dry, and in the meantime we'll do some more dry leaves. So let's start with a light one. I think I'm going to put down some more background. This is a light grey. I just want to get rid of some of the white of this tooth. Just going over it with crazy different marks, different direction marks, and just plonk down some water on that as well. Didn't clean off the brush properly from the last time, so it had a lot of green in it, but and then over here I'm going to come in with a light pink, cleaning off my brush this time. And this is a really big brush, so I've hit the other leaf and got some colour bleeding. So if you want to be precise, use a better brush. Okay, I'm just going to let that dry off. So we've got a nice light green leaf here. Let's go over it with this Chinese green and see if I can fill in some of that tooth, blending one over the other. Oh yeah, I know what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to do blending of one colour into the next. So with the dry. So I've got the Chinese green going down there. Then I'm going to take I'll take the blue and put that. So I'm just going to start overlapping it here. It's giving us a bit of a green, and then I'm going to move off onto the blue. So if you wanted to run one color into another to create a second color, you can get a really lovely blend. And again, I'm just going over that in different directions to fill in the tooth from as much as I can from different angles, because if you only ever go in one direction, then it's only going to sit on the same bumps. So sometimes you need to come in from a different direction to fill in that paper tooth. And this is kind of vaguely dry now, so we can start to go onto that. So you can have several different colors blending in on top of each other. And here you can see I'm still getting lots of tooth, but it's not that white of the paper, so that is nicer to me. And if up here I wanted it to be darker, I can just fill that in with the paintbrush, and then I can come back to it later when it's dried. So I'm just going to play around and draw some different plants and see what kind of different techniques we can use. That has gone into the area that was still wet, so you can see we'll do some drawing on wet area in a minute, on a wet area. But yeah, you can see the real difference between the dry mark and the wet mark on the. So I'm just going to put down some different colors in the leaves just to play around. I'm going to bring in this this golden yellow because I've got some green in there, as I've got some blue in there, so that'll make a nice green if I blend it right on top of the blue. Going right onto the edge of the leaves so that the blue outline also becomes green. That was a grey one I went on to, so. So I've got the pink background here, so I'm going to go on top of it with the pink. So I think that's really nice. It's got the pink behind it instead of the white of the tooth, but it's very subtle. So you've still got the texture of the crayon, but you haven't got that white of the paper. So that's a really nice way that you can use these with still taking advantage of their watery nature, but not necessarily having them full on as watercolor paint. I'm going to bring back in these shavings that I took off the crayon before. So I'm just going to wet them and release that colour. This feels quite stubborn in terms of breaking it down, but I'll just keep going over it. Okay, so now I'm just going to paint with it. But it just feels like a watercolor, so that is perfect. That's another way that you could use these. And let's see what happens if I go right over the wax that's already on there. So there's a risk of me disrupting everything that's underneath and including it in smudging it all. So if you're going to go over lots of stuff that's dry or that you want to stay dry, I would be careful about that. So for example, if I come in here to this area which is all dry and start to paint, not only am I using the paint that's already on my brush, but I'm picking up what's underneath it as well. So that could be something that you want to benefit from and take advantage of in your drawing, or not. So the takeaway is just to be really careful where you're putting the water when you've got these pencils, crayons laid down already. Now I'm going to use the green ochre, the colour that I struggle with. Let's just use it. And I'm going to draw some leafy thing coming in here. And this time we're going to use the water directly on it. So I'm just going over that gently and one time, and you can see that I've moved the pigment so that it colours in the tooth or the areas that I've gone over, but it's also leaving behind the crayon what laid down, so you're getting that really gorgeous texture. I'll get this other green. If I wanted to do the same thing but get rid of more of the texture, so I have to go back and forward over it quite a few times, but I have succeeded in getting rid of much more of it, so it's possible. It's not going to go entirely, but you can definitely have more or less texture. I want to see what happens when I really fill in the tooth a lot with it dry and then go over it with the water, because these two, the crayon that I put down was quite light, but if I really go heavy with it, so I'll just put one colour down to start with, and then I'll put another colour on top. I'm going to go for the indigo blue, so that's really quite dark, so just try and fill in as much of that tooth as I can. So that's really pigmented, that's great. So you can use this as watery or as pigmented as you feel like, depending on how much crayon you put down. And here I'm getting a blend of the indigo and the blue. That was the ice blue, indigo and the ice blue. I want to see what happens when I draw wet, or when I draw dry on wet. So I'm going to wet an area of the paper. This is wet all up here. And I'll come in with this green. This is the malachite green. So let's do some more leaves. So that is interesting. It gets rid of the grain immediately, so there's no, you still get that kind of crayon texture but in the water, but you don't get that white of the paper coming through because it is immediately bleeding into the water. I quite like that. That's a really lovely thick mark, so you can get some really great marks by doing dry crayon into wet. Let's try that again over here. I've already put some colour down there, but I'm just going to wet it and come in with a different colour. So this time I'll come in with this bright pink. That is lovely. So it's giving me a really lovely line, and it's also leaking out, bleeding out into the water. Okay, I'm going to come in and fill in some of those petals with this red. before they dry. I'll try a few different colours. I'll try the vermilion. That is a really lovely way to use these crayons. Obviously the paper that I'm using is not super absorbent for water, so it's buckling a little bit, but this could be a technique that you would try maybe on a hot press paper that was 300 grams, so it absorbed the water a bit better. You can really see how it changes when it's on the dry. I like that a lot though. This one gives you more control because it's not bleeding, but that is really fun. Let's blend one colour into another using them wet. So I'm going to use this grey and this blue. So we'll do it up the top here. So let's put some of that down. And then I'll have the crossover area. Put the blue down and then go into the blue. Okay, so we're going to go on the lighter colour first, which is the grey. Just watering that down. Now we're into the crossover zone where I've got the blue and the grey, and then onto the blue. Okay, I want to fill in some of this background, so I'm going to take this light grey and just scribble in among I'm going to make also a scribbly mess down here, so that's a dry scribbly mess, and let's try the wet on wet, or the dry on wet scribbly mess down here. Okay, there's something I want to try, so I'm needing a bit of space. I guess I'll come in up here. I want to try creating a leaf shape, so I'm going to put let's do the dark green, so I'll just make a leaf shape coming down from the top. Fill that in. I'll give it another colour on top. And then I want to try using my paintbrush with just some water to create some veins on this leaf. So we're going to have the contrast between the dry crayon and some wet leaves, veins. So let's just try that. I quite like it, but I feel like I need the background to be not white. I feel like it's not really, I feel like the white is not doing it justice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just searching for another patch on here. I might have to go onto a different piece of paper. Or else, let me see where I can do this. I'll just turn it around and do it in this skinny patch here. I'm going to put down some of this Chinese green just to make a bit of a background. But then I'm going to have to wet it and fill it in and wait for it to dry. So we'll come back to that, but I'll just wet that. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. I'm going to wet these top ones because I want to see what it's like to fill them in when it's wet already. Oh, that's nice. That's good. Yeah, so just damp, and then you can get really great coverage covering in that tooth with just one application. So you can vary what you want. If you wanted it to be more tooth showing, you can just do it dry, or you can give it a quick dampen the paper underneath and then just go over it. And it's already got the line outside, so it's not going to be bleeding that much, but you can really fill in much quicker. So there are so many ways that you can use these. And then another thing I wanted to look at was going light over dark. So we've got this dark leaf. Let me just see if it's dry. Yeah, kind of dry enough. So this is a lighter color, so going over on top, just putting some dots. So yeah, that shows up. So you can get light on dark as well, which is great to know. I'll just try some different light colors. I'll try the blue. Let's try the grey. That shows up really well. And let's try the Chinese yellow. That shows up too, maybe not so well. And the pale green, let's try that. Yeah, that shows up. So that's, you can get light over dark on these, which is great. I'm gonna paint over this as well. And that's lovely because you've got the solid painted leaf, but then you've got the crayon mark over the top. So you've got that nice texture in the crayon leaf, but the fully filled in white tooth underneath. Okay, let's come back to this one. That's dry now. So I'm going to put that same green down and just do this long skinny leaf. Okay, and I'm going to come in with my paintbrush with not much water on it, but just enough to draw some veins. And then I'm going to go in with this grey. I want to get a sharper point, so I'm just going to slice some off. So you can see that there's loads of different ways to use these Neocolors, and you can go over them time and again, just wait for them to dry, go back over them again, and you can get light over dark, dark over light. So there's a lot of possibility here. It's really quite fun. I'm going to come over, this leaf is dried now, I'm going to come over it with indigo. And now I'm going to try those veins again, see how that goes. It's going to come back in and go over that one. So it got a bit blurred, and if I wanted to sharpen it up, I can just go over again, trying not to smudge the other leaf I just painted with my hand. So I hope that you can see that there are lots and lots of different ways that you can use these Neocolors. So although my paper looks like a complete mess and lots of different techniques I tried out, there's a lot of potential to use these Neocolor IIs in lots of different ways. And I hope that you enjoyed watching this and that you got something out of it, and that if you choose to go and play with them, then you have as much fun as I did. Let me know in the comments below if you use these, or if you would like to, or any comments that you have about it. I'd be super interested to hear. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.